It's letter time, it's letter time. Dear notes, modern prog, 90s and forward, has on average put out better material than classic prog, 60s and 70s. While I love both to death, modern prog doesn't get the respect it deserves from older prog heads. And the notion that prog died after the 70s is completely false. It died from being popular, but prog is stronger than ever at this moment in time as far as excellent bands and albums coming out. I have to fully agree with this statement, and this statement actually came from my first call out for Let's Discuss. I couldn't have agreed more with this statement, and I wanted to make a full-on video about this because there's a few things that this person, I'm going to call out his name, Brandon Wood. There's a few things that Brandon really identifies within this that I want to touch base on. Us prog heads, we know that prog didn't die in the 70s because, damn, there's a lot of great music being put out today. The populace doesn't quite know that, mainly because it hasn't really reached the popular eye. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I want to keep on topic here, which is that modern prog on average has put out better material than classic prog, and modern prog doesn't get the dues that it deserves, which honestly I have to agree with. I am going to come out on record and say that a lot of the modern prog that we're getting today is much better than the prog that we got from the 70s and 60s. This is mainly due to two things. The first is that there's so much more to discover now. You have a much larger pool to draw from. Within the 70s, you still had that pool, but it was a lot harder to find and navigate. And the biggest thing that we have in our advantage is the advent and invention of the internet and being able for anybody to put their stuff out there, like bands such as Fido, Perfect Beings, Jolly, Gandalf's Fist. A lot of these more independent bands would never have gotten a foot in the door or gotten their music out if it weren't for music sites and music sharing. But let's get back to the real issue at hand here, and there's a few things at work. The first is the concept that what you are presented with first is going to be more enjoyed by you than what you seek out afterwards, because when you discover something first, it makes such a big impact that you go to discover more. Of course, you're going to be impacted harder on that original. Now that is probably part of the reason why bands, for me, such as Genesis, Pink Floyd, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, why they stand the test of time, because of the biggest impact that they did in the 70s. I mean, I'm going to give them credit where credit is due. All the bands from today's prog scene wouldn't be around if it weren't for the forefathers blazing the trail. This also goes to a second thing that I want to talk about. So we've already established that, and this has been proven time and time again, that those albums that you get introduced to from a band or from a genre first are going to be more impactful and sit with you more than those that you seek out later on. And this is backed up by many different researches. I think I even read one very recently that said the album that you discover a band with will be the album that you enjoy the band with the most. And this is partially true. Like the albums that I discovered with Dream Theater, being Octavarium and Scenes from Memory, are my two favorites. Same ones with Porcupine Tree, with The Sky Moves Sideways and A Bleak Planet. Same with Opeth, being Watershed and Ghost Reservoirs. Same with Genesis, with Selling England by the Pound and Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. So all those albums that I was introduced with a band, those ended up being my favorites from a band, which makes sense. Like if I don't connect with a band on the first listen of an album, I'm not going to be like, well, that wasn't that great. Let's see if they put out anything else. Like now I do that because I love the music. But when I was first discovering music in my teens, that wasn't my main, thought process, especially now when we have such a big pool to draw from. If something doesn't splash with me, I'm just going to keep looking for a different one. So that's part one. Part two actually comes from another article, and this is going more toward the older generation within the musical fan base, like my dad's generation, those that grew up in the 60s and 70s. And that is that your taste in music is set in stone. Well, not set in stone, but set pretty much when you're the age of like 19 to 20, and then you kind of stop. And this was a new article that came out just a few weeks ago. I don't know if it was by like Rolling Stones or something, but they said you stop looking for music once you get past the age of 30, because by that point you're more established, you've got kids, you've got a career, you've got a whole life, and you don't have a whole lot of time to go out looking for more music. And so that's why you guys come to me, because I can show you that. But again, you stop looking for music in that sense. So you kind of make up your mind that those albums that come out at that specific time, those are going to be the ones that you grab onto the most. And so this is why bands such as Rush, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Yes, Genesis, King Crimson, all those that came out in the 70s have been put on such a high pedestal, because those have come after the fact have kind of said, yeah, these guys are the star performers, that's what we aspire to be. And the fan base agrees, and the fan base encourages that. So it does kind of become an echo chamber in that sense. But the drawback to that, and the point that Brandon was kind of saying within his letter, by saying that modern prog has put out on average better material, and they don't get the dues that they deserve, comes into play as a drawback to this mentality of looking at music. And I have to agree with his statement that on average, again, because there's a larger pool, there are a lot more better music that is being putting out today than when we compare it to the 70s. And I think it's time to kind of really spread the light. And that's one of the main reasons why I've started this YouTube channel, was to bring the light forward to those new bands that are putting out the masterpieces. Those bands such as Fido that put out Snow Torch, Number 7, and Doomsday's Afternoon. Those bands such as like Shadow Circus that put out On a Dark and Stormy Night. Efrat with their debut title album. That's why I was doing so many masterpiece theaters, to show there are so many masterpieces that are being put out today that are sorely getting overlooked because of the shadows from the past. I mean, true, we are standing on the shoulders of giants, but we are also making our own giant footprint at this time as well. And we can lose sight of that by only focusing in and concentrating on things from the past. So all music is good music. All bands put out their own little masterpieces. And I'm so glad that now we're able to enjoy not only yesterday's masterpieces, but appreciate and enjoy today's masterpieces. And I hope that that generation that was ahead of me can kind of look at the landscape that we have now and appreciate some of the music that us kids are putting out. That only gives me hope for the more masterpieces to come in the future. So that's about it for this particular ramble. I know it was kind of all over the place, but it was one that I really wanted to put down and really get right. So let me know of your own thoughts about this particular topic. Have all the masterpieces and the great days of yesteryear, are they behind us, or is today putting out some amazing works, and do we need to showcase them a little bit more? Comment on that by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best, and until next time, notes out.